What are we starting with this week?
A Patreon. What do we do for the patrons again?
Just say thank you to our patrons.
Thank you to the patrons. Thank you, patrons.
Thank you.
You can sign up to our Patreon at patreon.com/SCI Guys.
You
But
can,
also,
yeah.
we've got a brand new show that you'll probably like. You can only get it if you're a patron. It's called SCI Guys After Dark. Just because the conversation is finished at SCI Guys doesn't mean that the conversation is actually over.
Sometimes the conversation happens in the dark.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. It's less science and more anything that comes to our minds. You'll probably enjoy it. Head to patreon.com/SCI Guys to listen to SCI Guys After Dark. Ooh.
You're welcome.
Shall we start the show?
Let's start the show.
Hello and welcome to the SCI Guys, the show where we talk about the crazy, weird, and wonderful stories from the science world. I'm Corey, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts Jamp and Luke Cutfer.
As always.
As always, welcome.
This week we're talking about intrusive thoughts.
Shut up. Sorry. Intrusive.
This is such a patron episode, can I say?
Yeah. It really is, isn't it? Our patrons very much, they have a very particular thing that they like to
Yeah.
vote for.
Yeah.
If you're a patron, you could head to our Patreon at patreon.com/SCI Guys. You can submit a topic. The other patrons get to vote on it. I say the other patrons, you get to vote on it too. And if that topic wins, we do that topic. That's what's happening right now.
You know, eventually
Isn't that fun?
we're going to run out of brain topics, and so you're not going to have any more to vote on.
We've already covered
gonna
this
have to
topic
pick-
more or less.
Oh,
right?
yeah,
Honestly,
pretty much.
we really have. Yeah, but let's get into it. You guys know about intrusive thoughts, don't you?
Yes.
Somewhat.
What do you know about intrusive thoughts?
They are thoughts that occur and you feel like you don't want them and you can't stop them.
Quite rude. Quite intrusive.
I suppose, yeah, that's yeah.
Not necessarily rude. They can be violent.
That's quite rude.
Sexual.
That's rude.
That can be rude.
I don't think being sexual is rude. I think that's very prudish of you.
You weren't brought up in the church.
I wasn't brought up in the church. No. I was brought up in the church garden,
I was brought
playing
up in,
with sticks and mud and worms.
I was brought up in my house.
Look at you, little privileged boy. You live in a house. We ran around the church ourselves.
I had mud. That was it.
All I had was mud and sticks. My friends were worms and my parents were ladybugs.
I had to build my own house.
Both of your parents were ladybugs. How progressive.
Lesby bugs.
So, it's hard to find a specific definition of intrusive thoughts. And even coming up with one is it's tough, isn't it? You've got to come up with a definition for thought. Or just say an intrusive thought is a thought that is intruding in your mind.
Right.
Although I guess it is fairly self-explanatory. What do you think a thought is?
Well, yeah. This is a funny thing is that I feel like the first thing in talking about intrusive thoughts is that I think it's not necessarily something we notice, or at least I didn't notice for quite a few years of my life, that I wasn't controlling my thoughts. The thoughts just come up in your head. And I suppose then they're just sort of noises. They're just sounds that you don't associate as coming from the outside world. You associate them as coming from the inside world. So however your brain is making sense of the world, and it gets like a signal from the outside world, it labels that as the origin of this signal is external to me. And then a thought is another type of electrical signal that the brain is labeling as the origin of this is within another part of me, right? And so I guess all thoughts are kind of intrusive thoughts. It's just whether we decide we want them or don't want them. Because if we're not controlling the majority of our thoughts, then they're all kind of like intruding. It's just that we label some of them fine and some of them I'd rather not have that thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you can get to a point where all thoughts are intrusive, where you don't control your thoughts, but we do control some of our thoughts, don't we?
Of course.
For example, I'm thinking about what you got to think about what you're saying.
But
to an
are
extent.
you controlling that? How do you control it?
Let's
That's
leave that till a little bit later. Let's put a pin in that.
Freaky way. I just mean like I don't know how I do it.
I know.
You can guide the direction of them.
Let's put a pin in that for a bit.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, getting ahead of ourselves.
You can just
Way ahead.
think harder.
Yeah, no.
There you go.
So we know that we can think, right? Or it appears that we can choose to think.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, it does
You-
appear that way.
Agree with that for now?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Sometimes it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it is. Use this language very carefully. It's like sometimes talking to Luke about his topics is like climbing a very precarious mountain. You have to find the exact right handhold and foothold to be able to get up there. Otherwise, Luke will be like, but what about this?
And
you'll come
slip and
tumbling
fall to the
down.
bottom.
I apologize. Making your climbing so hard.
Oh no, it's good. It's fun.
Yeah.
That's not the best definition, but it's it's an easy analogy for talking to you. I'm so sorry. That sounds so mean.
No, it's fine. Don't worry. I'm not insulted by any of this. I'm having a great time.
No, so it seems that we can control most of our thoughts, right? In that,
Not most.
No, not most of our thoughts. Well, it seems that you can. Well, most of the thoughts that are running through your head, right? You have some control over them. In that they're coming from you. Do you know what I mean? In that when you think about something, you are intending to think about it, or when you're trying to recall something, there's an active recall there.
Yes.
Whereas there's also a passive recall, a sort of less active thing where you don't need to specifically try and remember a memory. It just sort of comes to you,
and you're like, oh yeah,
that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So intrusive thoughts are kind of more the latter than the former. I say more the latter than the former. They are the latter rather than the former.
I agree, but I think that there's also a distinction between thoughts that arise on their own that you don't necessarily choose to have that are perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And then thoughts that arise on their own that you're like, I would rather not have that thought.
Well, the thing is that an intrusive, I think really an intrusive thought, is kind of defined by being unwanted, right? Or maladaptive in some way. But the thing is that, so when we talk about intrusive thoughts, we tend to talk about it in the scope of mental illness, right? Do you agree with that?
Yeah.
Most people talk about intrusive thoughts, talk about mental illness. So when you look at this online, a lot of what you'll see is, can you guess what you might see coming up? Like what sort of specific mental illness you'll see coming up with intrusive thoughts?
really
OCD?
anxiety, maybe OCD. Yeah.
OCD. Yeah. Anxiety sort of less so, but still up there.
Yeah.
OCD,
Yeah.
if you just type into Google right now, intrusive thoughts, boom, everything is OCD. It's all OCD all the time. And you guys, maybe do you know the reason for that? Jamp, what do you think the reason for that might be?
Your brain just tells you to do something over and over again.
Yeah.
Or like it screams at you until you
So-
check the door on the way out or whatever.
Exactly. So with OCD, it's kind of like if you think of it in terms of an intrusive thought that you then obsess over, right? So what I think is interesting here is that an intrusive thought isn't necessarily maladaptive in that it's not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. It's a normal process of human brains. It's just that it can be maladaptive in certain contexts. So in terms of OCD, you can obsess over a sort of unwanted thought, and that becomes a problem in and of itself. But unwanted or unintended thoughts are not themselves
Intrusive.
sort of
Intrusive.
they are intrusive. The point is that an intrusive thought isn't inherently a sign of a mental illness, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
It is interesting, isn't it?
But why not? I mean, I know all these things are sort of arbitrary lines we're drawing, but if you have intrusive thoughts, and you don't want them, why is that not a mental illness?
Because if it happens to a lot of people, then a lot of people are mentally ill. That kind of defeats the purpose of mental illness, doesn't it?
Okay.
It's
but
why
that's just
why
a
is
weird-
why is being greedy not a mental illness?
Well, it is.
But it's not.
It is.
It
But we don't
should
call
be.
it a mental illness.
Yes, of course, because of the categorization system. But like, it is. Like, it's like the thing we're talking about with like, well, not we talk about, but you see online that's like, if you saw a monkey that was hoarding every single banana and wasn't letting anyone else have any of the bananas, you'd be like, what's wrong with that monkey? But then we have people hoarding all the wealth, and we're like, no, we're not like, what's wrong with that monkey?
You misunderstand, Luke.
Yeah.
The
Capitalist
monkey doesn't have all of the bananas, right? It can't eat all of the bananas.
Yeah.
Not all the bananas are physical bananas. You don't seem to understand it.
No, I do
right?
understand
No,
it.
no. Not all the bananas are physical bananas, Luke. We just apply a banana value to what that monkey owns,
Of course.
okay?
Yeah.
So you like, it's not even... Sorry, I know this is going over some people's heads. Like, do you want to explain? Can you explain what I mean, please?
Well, so basically, in conversations about net worth, take Jeff Bezos. His net worth is whatever it is, like $1 trillion or something ridiculous, or like 100 billion or whatever net worth Jeff Bezos has. I don't care. It's something stupid. Then people go, oh, well, we should take some of Jeff Bezos' wealth away, and then the response is, well, no, because he doesn't actually have that money in cash. He has assets in Amazon.com, which have a value according to the market, but if ever he was to try and liquidate that value, the market probably the entire stock market would crash, but also the Amazon stock would crash. And in our weird economic system, basically every there's like one asset, and like technically through the way that our economic system works, everyone kind of, loads of people have a claim to the same asset. Like there's something like 100 times the amount of virtual gold as there is actual gold. So like, yeah. So, and when you put money in the bank can lend that out 10 times or 9 times more than you put in the bank. So there's 90% of the money isn't real. It's all absolutely insane. It's just so insane.
If you saw a bunch of monkeys arguing over imaginary bananas, you'd say there's something wrong with those monkeys,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Mhm.
But there's not something wrong with people for arguing
No.
over imaginary.
Well, you might not say there's something wrong with those monkeys. You'd say there's something wrong with the weird imaginary banana system they've come up with.
Well, absolutely, yeah. But the fact that they're all buying into their imaginary banana system, Luke, I think there's something wrong with what those monkeys are up to.
That's the thing, is that it is,
So it is
in
all the
some
monkeys.
ways, the advent of the ability to loan out, make up money is a very impressive, evolutionary thing that we have done as a species. It's just that it's kind of got a little bit out of hand now.
Well, look, it's a good thing. It's really awesome if there are just sort of great benefits and not that many drawbacks. But given that the drawbacks are extreme poverty, I feel like,
Interesting.
Something to consider, maybe.
yeah. Sorry,
To ponder
sorry,
on.
you have to die because we're not giving you any of these imaginary bananas. You see, you gotta die. I'm afraid. Either work for imaginary bananas or
You just got it.
perish.
You just got
Just
it.
gotta, because I said so.
Okay, so intrusive thoughts?
Yeah,
This
intrusive
is
thoughts.
quite a tangent,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah, well, monkeys and bananas and evil Jeff Bezos are among my most intrusive thoughts. So
Yeah.
no,
But yeah, it is interesting because you say like greed, if you're getting, because essentially you have, like, probably everyone has this intrusive thought, which is I need to get money, right? And it is like, I know that it wouldn't be medically be classed as an intrusive thought, of course. I'm using that term colloquially. But you're getting this thought, I need to get money, and money is only really like a thing that you use to get the other thing. So really you want to get the other thing, which is like food or water or warmth or shelter or whatever you want. And the fact that there are people who have way more than they will ever need, and they still feel the need to get more, that certainly should be classed as probably an intrusive
Broken.
thought.
Yeah.
And yeah, but then we have this weird distinction where you have, if there's a phenomenon, like Corey was saying earlier, if there's a phenomenon that kind of occurs in like a large portion of the population, it's no longer considered an illness, because an illness is like an abnormality. It's considered like a condition that we all have. So like you wouldn't class racism as a mental illness, despite the fact that it's clearly in one part, taking away the systemic issue, it's clearly in one part labeling a trait as having a meaning that it doesn't have. So that's obviously incorrect, and it's a thought that is incorrect. But because it's present in so many people, you don't class that as like in the same category of thing.
same with religion. We had this conversation
Right?
specifically the other day. Oh yeah, you missed it. It was Luke, me, and the fifth SCI guy.
Fourth.
No, the fifth.
Oh, the
It's like the fifth
Who
Beatle.
is the fourth?
Bliss is the fourth.
Yeah, bless the
This
Lord.
is the fourth. Okay,
Yeah.
fine.
So it was Luke, myself, and the fifth SCI guy. We were talking about sort of religion, and how religious people, some of them, could very clearly be like labeled as being mentally ill. Where I think we're specifically talking about a friend of ours who was basically raised in a Christian cult by evangelicals, and how close that is to sort of psychosis. But because a lot of people believe it, it's fine.
Yeah, if you're analyzing the world through a psychological, like psychology mindset, like I know somebody who was admitted into a mental health institution for believed schizophrenia. It turned out it was, I think, multiple sclerosis, which often gets misdiagnosed as schizophrenia. I believe that's what it was. And on one of the forms, he saw his doctor write, I'm not sure if his false beliefs are due to schizophrenia or his religious beliefs. And it's like, and you know, whatever, like I don't know if there's not a man in the sky or a person in the sky who talks to you through your thoughts and through your prayers. I don't know that, but to make the distinction, like what if I just decided I believed a specific type of God existed that no one else believed existed, I'd get labeled schizophrenic, or I get labeled not necessarily schizophrenic, but I'd get labeled something. And then if I believed that the Christian God was talking to me, or that in this case, this man I knew, it was John Lennon. He believed John Lennon was a spirit guide and leading him through life. That's then labeled, well, this one's a medical problem. This one's a religion. And it's just, I just find it interesting because I don't know what separates them if you don't believe in the thing they believe in.
It's interesting because, you know, you could engage in some kind of ritual. You could, if I was to say, yeah, I spend about an hour a day just wishing. You know, I've got my ritual wishing, and I just wish for an hour every day.
Yeah,
you'd be like, all right, what are you doing?
Well, that's the thing.
That's a bit. But if I change the word wish to prayer, you'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine.
Yes.
Go pray away, my friend. It's just.
I suppose it depends who you're wishing to.
Big man.
Big man. Okay, you're wishing to God.
No, big man.
No, flying spaghetti
big
monster.
man.
Big man.
Okay.
Oh, just called Big
Yeah,
Man.
my invisible friend, big man.
It's interesting because you get these superstitious beliefs. Like I was reading in The Guardian this week about how there's this superstition, I forget where it was, but there's a superstition basically where in some culture or in some tribe or something like that, they parade girls around naked to appease the rain gods, to try and get the rain gods to rain on them. And then there's another practice where they will
Get them all wet.
Yeah, no,
That's disgusting.
Anyway,
It's not my fault that the rain gods are.
Anyway,
Pervs.
and they also have like unmarried women plow the fields naked to get like the grain gods or the rain gods or something appease. And that's sort of like something where it's like, okay, we as a society are pretty sure that doesn't work. We're just pretty sure it doesn't work. But because it's your religion, it's really hard to do anything about it. And there are people who are saying like, you know, we need to get Child Protective Services involved because they're parading girls around naked and they're like 5 years old.
Yeah,
And-
but is it sexualized?
well, I don't know. I
think
have no
it's.
idea.
I think childhood nudity is fine if it's not sexualized,
Yeah, sure, maybe.
right?
But,
Like,
yes, but it's very weird the distinction we draw where we go, okay, we don't like what you're doing, but because it's under the guise of a superstitious belief, we can't touch it. But if it wasn't under the guise of a superstitious belief, we would be able to do something about it, or might do something about
well,
it.
I think that's fair enough. Because I mean, again, there's a sort of colonialist mindset or a very Western mindset where we've sexualized a lot of things. So we sexualize breasts, for example, and women are so sexualized that it extends to even sexualizing girls. So in school, girls can't wear certain pieces of clothing because you might distract the boys and the teachers.
Yeah.
If the teachers are being distracted by the school children, they should not be teachers, okay? And so I think it's
Maybe. You think? Maybe. I think you're onto there something, Corey. You should go and start a campaign.
this is you say this as though it's incredibly obvious, and yet,
Sure.
right? And yet.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you say, we should do something about this because the young girls are being paraded around naked. But if it's a religious belief, if it's something that isn't sexualized, if it's genuinely just go and do, then surely it's fine, right?
Why do they have to be naked?
Yeah, but why is being kids will strip themselves naked
Sure.
anyway?
Yeah, I don't know. I
just mean
read the article.
No, it's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I think we inherently feel discomfort with it because we sexualize nudity.
Of course.
But-
But yeah, I had the same thought. The point was not to do with whether they should be parading around naked or not. That's totally whatever, your culture, man. What the point was, whether we step in and do something based on whether it's a religious belief or not a religious belief.
I have a counterpoint here for you. I would argue that this thing that I know nothing about, if it is just a religious thing wherein like it is unsexualized nudity, I would argue that is far less unhealthy and not nearly as damaging as child beauty pageants, which happen
Whoa. Yeah,
which happen
yeah.
perfectly a perfectly normal thing to happen in the US. So it's an inherently sexualizing young girls
Yeah.
to an extent.
That's weird.
Right? So I mean, it's just I think it's interesting where sort of our biases and our values can kind of influence how we view things without us knowing. I know nothing about this sort of parading around children thing. I'm not saying it's good. It could very well be awful, but I just think that it's weird that we're fine with one thing and not fine with another thing when they're very like the reasons that we find one uncomfortable should really lend itself to finding the other one uncomfortable as well, you know? Anyway, moving on back to intrusive thoughts. So intrusive thoughts, we talk about them a lot in the sort of realm of mental illness. So specifically, we've already spoken about OCD. You said anxiety. There's also PTSD, which I think something that we've not touched on yet is intrusive thoughts in terms of images.
Oh, as in like flashbacks?
Yeah, exactly. So a sort of flashback could be an example of an intrusive thought. That is much, if you think about it, right? But it's much more sort of, I guess, developed in that it's a full sort of, it can be like more of a full memory rather than a sort of single thought. But you can see how it's a similar idea there. It's an unwanted triggering of a sort of memory or experience or thought pattern that is difficult to control. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You look quizzical. Look.
I'm quizzical. Why else would I be here?
I'm unsure.
You love
Would
us.
you like to verbalize the quizzical nature of your brain?
No, I was just thinking.
Not right now.
I was just processing what you'd said.
Perhaps later.
That's perfectly fine.
Thank you
Good to know.
for the permission.
Just check in when you do have you got something to say.
Being extra quizzical.
So obviously, yeah, we've spoken about OCD, PTSD, anxiety even. And we've kind of spoken about intrusive thoughts as being wholly negative. But you can also have intrusive thoughts, say, for example, in bipolar disorder. In not only depressive episodes, but in manic episodes.
Yeah, like telling you to climb a roof.
Or like,
or
like
jump off somewhere or spend loads of money.
Or it would be a positive intrusive thought. So my point here is that we've spoken about intrusive thoughts being sort of wholly negative, but that's not necessarily the case, right? You can have an intrusive thought that is just, oh, this is a thing, and I think we would probably notice the negative ones more often.
Well, like
as being
you're really cool.
Sure.
I'm just interested in so what makes it intrusive then?
In that, so an intrusive thought. So it's here from this sort of study that's talking about, I guess, intrusive thoughts in relation to a number of different mental health disorders. I think it's from 2010. It says intrusions are instances of involuntary or direct, as opposed to voluntary retrieval, in that their appearance in consciousness is spontaneous rather than following a deliberate effort or search.
Right. So that is much broader than I would have expected.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about this before, but like that is so much broader than I would have expected, because I feel like an awful lot of people then have intrusive thoughts. As in, I think that if you took an average member of society and sat them down and got them to meditate for a couple of minutes and asked them what happened, they would quickly notice that they weren't able to control any of the thoughts that were rushing through their head.
I was going to say, I would assume the majority of thinking would then be intrusive.
93.6% of people have had unwanted. So about 93.6% of people have like sort of unwanted thoughts or images will pop into their head.
Frequently, or have ever.
Well, we'll have. So this study, we'll go into it a little more in a bit, but this was at least one intrusion over the period of the past 3 months. So
Right. Okay.
again, do you see what I'm saying about it not being something that is purely related to sort of
Mental health.
yeah,
Yeah.
aberrant sort of
Because it's
psychopathology.
all the time. I found a really interesting thing, by the way. So, do you guys get any involuntary thought? If you sat in silence in meditation for like
all the
1
time.
minute,
It's
would you
so
get
annoying.
involuntary thought?
Yeah, I'm trying to meditate and it's
Silence
so
for a minute.
annoying.
What do you mean?
Can't do that.
Really?
No.
Okay. Well, anyway, so I saw this really interesting thing, which was admittedly it was a TikTok, but it's really cool. Which is that, and it's something I actually noticed a few years ago when I was having large mental health problems. If you keep your eyes still, you can't think. So when you think, your brain, your eyes sort of dart around, and I don't know why, I don't know what's causing it, but if you hold your eyes perfectly still and center, then your brain doesn't seem to think. But you just looked up, Corey, in order to do this.
I looked up so that I
so
could
keep your eyes center.
Oh,
and
sorry.
straight.
Did you say center and straight? Okay.
Yeah, center and straight forward, and hold them there, and you can't think. Now, obviously, you keep doing that. I'll talk so that it's not a completely silent podcast for everybody. But your eyes do dart around as you think. I don't know if that's to do with the point of the brain where the thought originates, or I've no idea. That's just a complete guess. But isn't it really interesting? It's really
Oh,
quite.
that is the opposite of what I've experienced.
It's really quite eerie.
You know, I've seen Jamp space out and not look anywhere before.
No, yeah, it's quite nice, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
You probably just got a taste of me. There you go.
yeah. No, it's like, I mean, I don't well, you saw this on TikTok, right?
Yes, but I also separately noticed it a few years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
I
Maybe
found it quite hard to hold on to a thought when I was just doing that. I was trying to follow a train of thought and it would fall.
Oh,
off
maybe-
at some
oh.
point.
Hang on, you
Hold
were
on, wait.
trying to follow a train of thought.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
But that's
I
the
think,
opposite of what I was asking
No,
you
no,
to
no,
do.
no, no.
Wait,
I think
what?
I think this makes sense. I think my understanding of this would probably be that you're focusing on your eyes.
No. So you're meant to try and have empty head.
No, but you're
No thought.
focusing on your eyes staying
Oh,
straight in the center.
meditating, yeah.
That's hard. Because your eyes want to look around.
But that's
You're
my point, is your eyes want to look around and your brain wants to think.
But if
your
I can't-
eyes wanting to look around is sort of like the brain wanting to think.
Yeah, but okay, so it's hard if you're focusing on doing one particular thing,
Yeah.
holding something that is. So if you're focusing on something like stopping yourself from like moving at all,
Yeah.
right? Then you've got to focus on a lot of different things, right? Because staying still is probably a little bit more difficult than doing sort of repetitive action. Yeah, would you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah.
So is it not a similar thing of it's hard to think about other things when you're focusing on one somewhat difficult task?
I think it is more than that. If you try to focus on, say, the feeling of your right ear or holding your hand still, I think you'll get a thought quicker than if you're trying to hold your eyes still.
Yeah, but thinking about the feeling of your ears is I think, quite different.
But trying to keep your hand still then, because it's, you say about motor. I don't know, this is just my experience. And also lots of people in that comment section were saying, oh my God, this is incredible. And also it being there and also having separately noticed it. But
yeah, I
it's
just
maybe
don't.
completely
I
wrong.
would not trust a TikTok in terms of.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, sure. I think there are many. I mean, we've experienced this just now, the three of us. I think that it's harder. It's easier to hold thoughts at bay when you're focusing on keeping your eyes still. But I would probably say that it's. I wouldn't necessarily trust the explanation from a TikTok.
No. There wasn't any explanation given in the TikTok.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, interesting.
But you would notice, would you say it was fair if you were sitting and thinking, your eyes would dart around as you thought? As the thoughts popped up in your head, your eyes would dart around to different locations as the thoughts came out.
Yeah, sure.
Came up.
Yeah, your eyes do that, but your eyes will be darting around usually. Anyway, also you like if someone is lost in thought. Do you ever get lost in thought and you end up staring at something, and then you come back and you're like, oh, sorry, I wasn't staring at you. I was kind of.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Interesting.
You've
Exactly.
been staring at someone. It's like,
I think if you're running through, I think maybe if you're going through lots of different, like you're like trying to think about, you're trying to remember something. Maybe you're trying to think. You'll move your eyes. Sure. Or I think there's either way. You can have your eyes stay sitting kind of in one place if you're focusing on a particular thought, or you can have them move around.
whenever I try and meditate, my eyes are just darting around. 'Cause
Yeah.
On their own.
Yeah.
It's like they do them by themselves, and then I notice that I'm like, I need to stop doing that.
And even then, the moving eyes, the eyes moving around, and sort of that happening during, let's say, sort of heavy thoughts, and having it being harder to like for thoughts come to your mind, keeping your eyes still. I think that's probably applying sort of causation to that is probably not the best way of looking at it.
Okay.
I mean, because there's lots of different things that make your eyes move. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool. Awesome. So yeah, I guess there seem to be broader definitions for intrusive thoughts depending on where you're looking. There could be, if you want to talk more specifically about just the sort of unwanted thoughts, but you can also then expand that definition to be really any kind of thought that arises spontaneously through, with not through sort of deliberate sort of conscious retrieval, you know? And I think it's interesting that this sort of the involuntary thoughts seem to be quite common. Unwanted involuntary thoughts even seem to be quite common. In that study that I mentioned, I think from 2016, where they looked at 777 university students across the world and found that 93.6% of them had an unwanted thought sort of pop up in their mind at least once in the past 3 months. So intrusive thoughts aren't necessarily something that maybe they're probably more common with or more frequent in people with mental health disorders, but an intrusive thought in and of itself is not sort of a sign of being mentally ill. And I think it's interesting that the content, because the content of intrusive thoughts varies depending on depending on different mental health disorders. So there's something interesting that, have you guys read A Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling?
No,
I've not.
You've
is
not?
it by J.K. Rowling? Is it by her pseudonym?
No, it's by
J.K. Rowling.
Robert Galbraith, I think, isn't it?
No, I'm pretty sure it's J.K. Rowling.
No, it was J.K. Rowling. It was
Yeah.
J.K. Rowling. Robert Galbraith
It's
is
the first one after Harry
purely,
Potter.
yeah. It was the one that she did after Harry Potter, and then
Yeah.
Robert Galbraith was only for the
The detective.
the detective novels.
Yeah.
So Casual Vacancy. You haven't even read it. Wow.
No, I haven't even read. Because I remember seeing it on the bookshelves when I was like really little, and I was like, she writes other things.
she wrote that to one other
Yeah,
thing.
that one other thing.
So Casual Vacancy. In it, there's a character who is very interesting. He's a school teacher. Do you guys remember this character at all?
I've
Like, you've
read it.
I thought you said you read it.
No.
Oh, wasn't
Neither
listening.
have I.
I hear what I want to hear, evidently.
Mm.
So there's a character in it who is a school teacher who has constant intrusive thoughts about children, basically.
Oh.
And there's this OCD that is like basically stressing yourself out about like wanting children. There's another thing as well that someone I know had this particular kind of OCD, but about being gay.
Oh.
Right.
So it's weird in that you can think about intrusive thoughts. Basically, the sort of content and frequency can determine whether you class it as being evidence of sort of a mental health disorder or not.
Mm.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? So it's normal to have it could be normal to have an intrusive thought every now and then. You know, like maybe I should jump,
Yeah.
Jump.
or maybe I
So-
should drop this baby or something. You know?
In the
Oh,
one about
stop
in
talking
the
about me.
in the intrusive thoughts, like so, for example, the intrusive thoughts about whether somebody, the thought that they are gay, so they are like going about their daily business and they're just like
I'm gay.
they like they happen to like look at a man and then the thought is like, oh, I'm gay because I looked at that man
They
in that way,
had a crush on someone
right?
who then transitioned, and so they got on their head like, but what if I'm actually gay because this happened?
Right.
Ah, I see.
That's really interesting because I guess that it doesn't really matter, but also like I guess it's like the brain trying to go like, how do I make sense of this?
Mm.
Because I thought I was this thing, and now I have this new piece of information, and so now I'm like obsessing, trying to make it all fit into the boxes that I've got.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because I mean, intrusive thought. I mean, we can really get into it now. I think what you were wanting to mention up top, Luke, about
Oh yeah,
intrusive thoughts, right? Because we could talk about intrusive thoughts as being unwanted, spontaneous thoughts, and specifying unwanted would imply that there are other spontaneous thoughts, and sometimes there are other spontaneous thoughts. You know, you can just look at something and be like, "Oh, wow, I just remembered something.
yeah,
I just
Yeah.
remembered this," and you could do the same thing. And if it were, say, if it were an intrusive thought, if you want to class it as an intrusive thought, it would be unwanted. You kind of think of it as coming from outside the self. So a lot of people think of intrusive thoughts as being thoughts of violence or thoughts of like a sexual nature, which fair enough. You're like, you think those and you're like, oh no, why am I thinking that? I don't want to do that. But there's almost like maybe a voice in the back of your head saying like, oh, what if this? What if that?
Yeah.
For anxiety, it could be thoughts of what if this happened? Like, oh, what if I crash? What if I crash right now? What if I crash right now? What if what if something awful happens, right? And I think the key distinction that we have for intrusive thoughts is that we separate them from ourselves, right? We say, well, this is me, the conscious entity of me, and this thought is not me.
Mhm.
It's come from the same place. It's in this little noggin,
yeah.
but I separate it from myself because I don't want to do this.
Mhm.
I don't want that.
So that's called an ego-dystonic thought. So in OCD, you have this idea called ego-dystonic thoughts, which is, I think it's dystonic thoughts, which is basically a thought that you have that doesn't match up with your sense of self and who you believe yourself to be.
Right. Yeah.
So in the case of like this school teacher in this book, or in the case of this person who's having thoughts about being gay, if they don't conceptualize of themselves as gay and they're pretty sure they're not gay, then the thought doesn't match up with who they are. And so that's ego-dystonic. Lack of matching. I don't know. I'm not actually sure what dystonic means. But yeah, that's interesting.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Just to quickly look back to not non-negative intrusive thoughts. So I mentioned positive ones in bipolar disorder, but another thing that I think is interesting is in addiction. So you could have a positive, like an intrusive thought of positive imagery relating to whatever it is you're addicted to. So for example, if it's let's say if it's a cigarette, you're like, oh, the good feeling of smoking right
Yeah,
now,
a lot of people mention that to me.
right? And so that's
Yeah.
an intrusive thought, like especially if you're trying to quit. It's just like it's coming in there. You don't want it,
Yeah.
but you can't stop it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that the definition of intrusive thoughts in the different places that I've looked seem to be slightly different. You know, like I think the key thing here is obviously unwanted, right? Which
Yeah. I just find it very interesting. It's an interesting definition that intrusive thoughts includes thoughts that are occurring without your sort of direction, but also that you don't mind being there. Because if you came round to my house and I didn't necessarily invite you, but also I wasn't fussed that you were there, I wouldn't label you an intruder. And so it's kind of a misnomer to a certain extent, I feel, or at least it's kind of maybe an overbroadening to suggest that like most of the thoughts all the time that most people are having might potentially be intrusive thoughts, when it's just like, oh, I forgot this thing. That's an intrusive thought. Or like, did that man just look at me funny? That's an intrusive thought. Even though you're not fussed by the thoughts being there and you're not trying to stop them being there.
I think strictly the definition of intrusive thought is something that is unwanted.
Okay.
Just that in some instances I've seen it being defined, like literally I read from you that paper, that it's something that appears without effort.
So it's a poorly defined term.
Well, I think because then obviously an unwanted thought is, again, it comes down to the definitions of language being clunky and bad,
Yeah.
and the definitions that we use to sort of describe mental illnesses as well, because those are ill-defined in and of themselves. Like what separates sort of normal function from abnormal function. In OCD, for example, one of the key parts of that, I think we spoke about this, is that you just sort of you feel compelled to carry out sort of the compulsions due to the obsessions, but you don't want to, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
Or in addiction, it's something that you don't like. Even if you want to stop, you can't stop. Like you don't want to do it, but you feel the need to do it, even to your own detriment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like with these definitions. Well, where does something become sort of fall into those definitions?
Yeah,
right?
and that's the funny thing. We've come back to this a few times before, but it's like always this really funny thing about how mental illnesses are diagnosed when something becomes a mental illness, is where it interferes with your sort of ability to survive, right? So if it interferes with your ability to basically pay your bills and like carry on being a person, eat, then it becomes, okay, this is a problem. Whereas like you can have something like we've said, like an addiction to spending, for example, and never realize because you're also really rich.
Yeah.
So that doesn't get labeled as a spending addiction because it's not interfering with your ability to be a person.
Or a bunch of people that are, say, addicted to a bunch of men that have got eating disorders and are addicted to going to the gym. They
Right.
don't notice it.
Because it doesn't interfere with, in our society, it's like that's labeled as fine.
Yeah, you're good. You're fine. You're good. Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Like people, I've heard people being like, oh yeah, I measure out every single meal. Like I take scales with me to measure out every single meal so that I can.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Whoa. It's quite a Darwinian view because it's sort of like we're looking at things as to whether they interfere with your ability to continue existing and essentially like if you want to reproduce. But it's not looking at things with the view to like, how do we get people to be as happy as possible? Or how do we get people to have like positive quality of life? It's very much like it's quite like utilitarian in that respect.
I think it's a case of how do we get these people to integrate with society?
Yeah.
Because if we're talking about happiness, like we've been through this before, well, a great way to treat depression is to fix society. That's quite difficult.
Yeah.
So pump them full of drugs and give them some therapy and send them on their way. And obviously,
Why can't we give therapy to all the people who are making society?
but obviously, that's not to say that every single depressed person is depressed because of society.
No.
Or that medication doesn't help, or that therapy doesn't help. All of those things do help. My point is that with in some regards, things that are classified as being mental disorders, mental illnesses, like say, like autism. A lot of people that are autistic, really are not going to be hugely affected by being autistic if they were in a society that catered for them more effectively.
Yeah, we got
Right.
a comment about this actually. We were talking on, I think on a live show, I mentioned that we were talking about, I think, Jordan Peterson and how psychiatry and psychology, kind of to a certain extent has to, or at the moment is, quite an individualistic sort of practice, because somebody comes in to your practice saying, I've got these problems. It's not necessarily going to help them if you just explain how society is to blame and they can't do anything about it. So you give them a set of tools. Okay, well, existing in the society that you do, these are the things that you can do. These are the mistakes you might be making in terms of how you think about it. And also, we don't really talk about society. And apparently, according to this comment, the field of psychology is starting to make changes and understand and recognize this. But it's also, to a certain extent, a problem with how our governments are quite intent on basically allowing as much as possible and creating, at the moment in our country at least, we've got a conservative government, and conservative governments generally increase free markets and allow companies to do more and reduce regulation if possible. That might be an oversimplification, but basically what that means is that you have less and less centralized control of the way your society is molding, and more freedom for sort of the people to make up the rules according to the free markets, and then we will step in as the government if things get too bad. And so if you have, at the extreme, no centralized control, you essentially, there's no one who can do anything about society. We are all creating society simultaneously, but one individual or a set of individuals, like psychologists, can't make a change to it, right? They can't do anything about it because they're one subset of society. Whereas if you have a sort of slightly more centralization, although there are problems with that, you can at least make quite large changes quite quickly that might fix some of these problems. That's not meant to be a political. It's just meant to be a point. It's not meant to be a political statement, but it is.
I get that.
Unavoidably a political statement.
I mean, I think the interesting thing is that with a broken system, centralization. With a broken system, you can centralize power in order to fix the system, but with there is the possibility of a more decentralized system, which works effectively.
You're right. Bitcoin. Sorry.
Jesus Christ.
Look, I promise you, you're making yourself sound like someone that you don't want to make yourself sound like.
I know, it was a joke. Just because you're talking about decentralized power.
No, I know. No, but
it sounded like you're about to launch into like a plug for Ethereum there. So if we put the blockchain and we allow the blockchain to control everything.
And this episode is brought to you by Coinbase. No. So I think it is difficult and interesting that we dealing with problems on an individual level is one way, but it's like putting a plaster over a gaping wound, isn't it? That ultimately, if someone is depressed, because if someone is depressed, it is not going to help them in their depression if they are forced to go to work every day or live on very poorly on sort of unemployment. All of these things that will only make their quality of life worse. It's kind of hard to be like, well, yeah, your depression will get better, but until then, you're living this really crappy life, which is, if anything, would just make any normal person depressed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like it's.
Yeah, there's the idea that there are certain circumstances in which being depressed is a perfectly rational response to the circumstance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, oh, this is your situation and you're feeling sad and you don't want to do anything? Of course you are. Yeah. Now we need to do something about that. We're not just going to leave you like that. But yeah, like that's the first step, isn't it? Is to go like, oh, because like you get so depressed about being depressed as well. You get in this like loop.
It's like if you, people with ADHD, for example, a lot of neurodivergent people will end up having sort of depression and anxiety. And if you start you can treat the depression and the anxiety, but if you're still leaving them like sort of untreated for ADHD, it's not really solving the problem, is it? Because if you're depressed because you can't work or think or basically exist in society effectively, and you don't know why,
Yeah.
trying to treat the depression isn't going to solve that problem. So you just get depressed again and again and again. Right.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, okay, you've got ADHD, let's give you some Ritalin, or let's give you these effective strategies to sort of work with yourself, then boom, you're basically treating the depression without having to treat it in the first place. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
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 It is. Yeah. So again, with intrusive thoughts, they're the sort of unwanted, spontaneous thoughts or images that come to mind, and they do, like, it is present in everyone more or less. Like, it does happen every now and then to everyone at the very least, but in sort of, I guess, certain mental health disorders, it can, it's obviously a normal process that can become maladaptive. So in depression, you can have intrusive thoughts. Like, if you've got, say, suicidal ideation, you can have intrusive thoughts about that. You can have intrusive thoughts in anxiety about just bad things happening. OCD, like the compulsions and the obsessions, can come from intrusive thoughts. PTSD, you could even classify sort of flashbacks as being a kind of form of intrusive thought, or intrusive thoughts coming through being triggered or anything like that. And even, like, in addiction, intrusive thoughts of cravings and whatnot. In bipolar disorder, both in when you're basically low and high, you can get intrusive thoughts. So I think what's interesting here is basically the conversation about intrusive thoughts not being, we think of intrusive thoughts as being, this is a bad thing and that your brain does when it's broken. But again, it's not. This is it comes from a misunderstanding of mental health disorders.
Yeah.
Intrusive thoughts are just a thing brain does, right? And ultimately, when you think about it, spontaneous thoughts happen constantly. We label the ones that we don't like that are distressing as intrusive thoughts. And then when that becomes an issue in and of itself, probably due to the sort of other issues in the brain, then we sort of pathologize it and say, this is a symptom of that. And people kind of forget that actually, no, this is something that happens
all the time.
Yeah. This is just sort of maladaptive. It's a
major ones.
Yeah, it's a normal process that is happening to an abnormal degree, or is being or being reacted to in a sort of maladaptive way. Yeah. Shall we blow people's minds and get into why all thoughts are sort of non-conscious thoughts?
And yeah. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say is that another type of intrusive thought I used to get a lot was so I never got an official diagnosis, but I'm pretty sure I used to have, possibly still have, a form of sort of OCD that's kind of, I think I've just got lots of things going on that they kind of morph into different things, and they don't necessarily have any clear diagnosis. They don't seem to stay the same all the time. But I used to have, as far as I could self-diagnose, which is now, it's not necessarily a perfect practice, but I had like existential OCD, which is a form of pure OCD. Which is essentially like intrusive existential thoughts that don't have answers. And I would also have sort of like, something would happen that I didn't understand why it had happened. And I would then go in this spiral of like existential, what's the existential ramifications of this? What does it mean? What does this mean about like the way the universe operates? What's going on? And like, those were just, oh my gosh, so stressful. And it was actually Noah who turned to me once when I was talking to him about this, and he was like, I was sort of expressing that I needed to do that, like it was an important thing to do, and Noah was like, "No, you can just not do that, And I was like,
"Just stop thinking."
Whoa, what? And obviously, I don't necessarily. He wasn't meaning you can just choose to not be depressed, or you can just choose to not do that. He doesn't mean that at all. But it was the fact that I was expressing that it was actually a thing I had to do. It was important. I had become identified with that process as if it was something that was actually important that I do. In the way that, like, when I used to be very depressed, I used to think that being depressed was an absolutely rational response to such a sad world, the way the world is. And actually, the world is sometimes very sad. But, ultimately, being sad about the world that is sad wasn't really helping me thrive.
No, it's just causing stress, really.
Yeah, but I'd become so identified with the depression that I was like, depression makes the world seem even sadder than it is. And therefore, I'm experiencing a sad world. Therefore, the depression is completely justified.
Yeah.
And it's like a loop where the world gets sadder the more depressed you get, and then you think that actually is the world, and so you get even sadder.
I think from an external perspective, when you were in that sort of mindset of like existentially questioning everything,
Yeah.
what was interesting, I think, was that you very much seemed to feel like it was important and necessary to do that.
Yeah.
And the thing about Noah is that Noah, if his thing is just not thinking about something,
Yeah.
like he'll just be like, if it's too much, he's like, no, not thinking about it.
I think
So it'd be very funny to watch the two of
Yeah.
them, the two of you have
Yeah.
conversations where you'd be like, but what about this? What about this? What about that? And Noah's like, never thought about it.
Why do you care?
I found it just mind blowing that the amount of things that I was like, I've thought about this for years, and Noah was like, yeah, I guess you could think about that, but
I
I
think it
did it
was
to you before
honestly
the show. You asked me a question about something, and I was like, haven't thought about it.
yeah, well, yeah.
I think it was the best thing for both of you though, in that coming a little bit more towards
Yeah.
the middle of like maybe think a little bit more about some stuff and look, for the love of God,
Please
stop.
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 Take
Just
a break,
stop
man.
it. Like, you know, it's like, hey Luke, do you want to go out? Do you want to go out for dinner? Do you want to maybe get a takeaway? And Luke's like, but I don't know. What is this the true purpose of life? Should I be getting a takeaway? What are the implications of this on the rest of the world? It's like, I don't know, man. Just get some chips,
Do you want
please.
a curry
you know?
or not?
Yeah, like exactly. But like,
felt a lot of responsibility, man.
yeah. I mean, it's understandable. I think that I think again, existential thought is this is the thing that I find really interesting about mental health disorders. It's in that a lot of them seem to be just normal processes, but to an abnormal degree.
Yeah,
right?
too much.
Yeah, too much. Like, you know, you're being sad is fine, and
Yeah.
people being sad is an appropriate response to some things. Being sad all the time and being unable to get out of that's no bueno. It's
Yeah.
no good. You don't want that. That's real tough. And you know, thinking existentially is beneficial until you can't stop doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So you were going to blow people's minds as to why all thoughts might be involuntary thoughts.
Well, okay, right. So so intrusive thoughts, part of that is it being unwanted. And I think part of something being unwanted is, like Luke says, it sort of challenges your perception of self, or it exists outside of your own morality. And I guess that does challenge your perception of yourself, because you would like to think that the thoughts that you choose to think of, the thoughts that come to your mind, you're in control of. For one thing, you want to think, I'm in control of what's going on in my brain. Because it's my brain.
That feels
I'm me.
nice.
Yeah, it feels
Yeah.
nice, you know? I am me, and I am in control of me. Because if someone else is in control of you, that's
Scary.
yeah, it's scary.
It's
It
not
happens
nice.
in a lot of horror films, right? Like
Yeah.
the involuntary control of someone else controlling your body involuntarily.
Mind control is a key feature of many horror stories.
Yeah, I mean, look at Us and what's the other one?
Out.
Get Out,
Yeah.
and Us. Both of them involve involuntary, someone involuntarily
intruding
controlling your own
in on
body.
your
Yeah,
mind, yeah.
intruding. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so obviously, yeah, we want to know that we're controlling what's going on in our own head. And so when something challenges that, for example, by making us think, oh wait, hold on, either I'm in control of what's going on up here, and I have thought this violent thing, or there's this external thought in my own head, and both of those things are distressing,
Mhm.
and those thoughts are sort of unwanted, right?
Something's making me think this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you know, and I guess that can sort of lead to you like really questioning yourself. Again, the sort of the example of like the sort of OCD about sort of unwanted sexual thoughts. Like that's a very understandable thing. If you have that, you can then focus
Yeah.
and obsess on
I
that.
read an article about someone who has that for like incestual thoughts as well. Like they have a lot of thoughts. Yeah. Just sounds awful.
Yeah. I mean, even just a thought of like, oh, what if I think this? What if I think like an anxiety thing?
Mhm.
What about thinking it?
Yeah.
Thinking
Oh,
about whether you
God.
might think it.
That's
Oh, I get stressed out about thinking stuff all the time.
Why?
Because what if I think it?
But well, then you'll just experience thinking it, and then you
But
won't do
what-
it.
But
No.
what if I'm thinking it because I deep down I
You
actually want to think it?
No.
Yeah, right. I know it's irrational.
Well, if you want to think it, Corey, that's fine.
I don't want
you
to
can
think it. No,
Thinking-
I don't want to
thinking
think it.
doesn't do anything.
No, I
You
don't
can
want
think-
to think it.
Okay,
No.
but you also think you might think. You think you might want to think it.
No. I don't think that I'm.
Boys, please. Stop.
It's like an intrusive thought about if you think about this, it's because you.
So you have intrusive thoughts about potential later thoughts.
Look, I'm layers and layers deep on this
Wow.
anxiety thing.
Ah.
Honestly,
So
I
interesting. So you get anxious about thoughts that might arise
yeah.
just because you don't want to experience the experience of having that thought.
Well,
It's like Harry Potter being scared of fear itself.
yes, I'm as cool as Harry Potter, not being scared of anything except for true fear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Like it's not just like you're having an intrusive thought and then you're wondering, what does that mean about me? You're having thoughts about thoughts potentially arising that haven't arisen yet.
Yeah. And what if I think them and then it's because it doesn't matter?
That's so interesting.
It's
Wow.
not. It's quite annoying,
No,
actually.
but
No,
from the third party perspective, it's fascinating. I'm sure from the first person perspective, it's rubbish.
imagine sitting someone down during psychosis, being like, "This is very, very interesting." I'm sure, from your perspective,
It's
terrifying.
yeah.
But I have to say, from where I'm sitting, very, very interesting to look at.
Do you ever get intrusive thoughts about potential future thoughts?
I
Okay, well, let me wrap my head around this. Intrusive thoughts
I'm so sorry.
about an intrusive thought. So, oh my God, what if I think about this? No.
So, okay, you have cake,
Yes.
right? So some people would get intrusive thoughts about cake, and they're worried. They just they get the cake feeling, and they're like,
All the
oh,
time.
that might mean
The
I
cake
now
feeling.
eat thing. They get the cake thought, and then they think, oh no, what if I now eat cake, right?
Right.
And then that makes just thinking about cake quite a distressing thing.
Yeah.
So you now have potential thoughts about cake. So you worry, what if I think about cake?
Oh, because it'll stress me out.
Because when I think about cake, it will be stressful. And now you have thoughts
No.
about potential thoughts about cake. And then that's stressful because you're stressing that you might think about cake, right? What do you then get thoughts about potentially thinking about about
Just
cake?
No.
eat the damn
No.
cake.
No, I'll just eat the cake. Although actually, I think in this context,
Lay it
cake
all
is
to
something
rest.
you do not want to eat. So
No.
I'll just leave the
Oh,
cake.
okay.
Yeah, I'll leave the cake.
Oh. So you don't get, it doesn't go 3 layers deep,
No,
just
it
2
doesn't go
layers
through.
deep.
No.
Okay, cool.
No. Yeah.
Stops
All
at 2.
Yeah.
I can deal with 2.
How kind of it.
Well, it's more. I mean, the 2 layers. The 2 layers deep is not. It's seeing cake and being like, oh, but what if I think about? Okay, so an intrusive thought about cake, for
Yeah.
example, would be seeing cake and thinking about eating cake.
Yeah.
The intrusive thought about the intrusive thought is seeing cake and thinking, oh God, what if I think about eating cake?
Right.
So you see the end point and then worry about getting the thought about. That's really interesting.
Could you say something like the urge to smoke a cigarette would be the first layer, and then having thoughts about, oh, what if I get the urge to
Yeah.
smoke a cigarette?
Oh, I
would
get
be the
it. So
second
you
layer.
see a cigarette,
Yeah.
and you're worried you might want to smoke it.
Yeah.
Yes, rather than getting the urge to smoke it, I worry about getting
You-
the urge.
You worry about
worry
getting
about-
the urge, right?
Yeah, rather than getting the urge and worrying about that, I worry about getting the urge,
Before you've got the
despite
urge.
that I have
Yeah.
no urge.
Yeah.
Because what if
Right.
I'm fighting? What if I actually do
Yeah.
want to?
What if you're closer
And
to the urge
I'm
than you
just
thought?
I've just buried it so
Yeah.
deep that I'm fighting the urge.
Yeah.
And like,
Right.
The urge is right around the corner, and you
it's
don't know.
horrible. Yeah.
So then in that scenario, you could then start getting worried about seeing a cigarette because it would give you the thought that you'd worry that you might want to smoke it.
There's a third layer.
I suppose. Yeah.
There's
sure.
this is like a 2-dimensional thing going on here.
Man, there's like a 4D chess thing.
Yeah, it's so interesting.
So back to thoughts and
Oh, yeah.
why all thoughts
And why?
yeah, why thoughts
And
and
why.
why?
Yeah.
No, so obviously we like to think that all thoughts come from our brain consciously. But if you're
Mhm.
if you're a SCI GUYS fan, you'll probably know that it's less true than you'd think,
Mm-hmm.
right? In that a lot of thoughts, well, most of what goes on in your brain isn't necessarily under the conscious control of you, the self.
Mm-hmm.
And even thoughts to do things like the sort of thought to move your. So, for example, there's the experiment where they looked at sort of getting someone to think about something or move their hand in a particular way, and you could see a spike in brain activity before the person said that they thought to do the thing.
Yeah.
Right, or before they decided to move their hand.
Yeah.
So there is an underlying part of your brain that decides to do something, and then the conscious part of your brain decides to do the thing.
Yeah.
And then your body sort of performs the action. So there's a sort of this step before your conscious brain decides to do something that causes you to decide to do it.
Something
That
decides
you're not necessarily aware of,
to make. Yeah.
right?
So it's like you in the middle. The brain goes, "Shall we do this thing?" And then you go, "Yes," and then it happens.
Yeah, but you're not aware that you're saying yes. So it's a case of like, so I'm standing behind Jamp and I whisper in his ear, "Hey, you want to raise your hand?" And Jamp thinks,
Oh.
I wanna raise
so
my hand.
I whisper.
I'm
I whisper.
questioning.
Okay, maybe let's use Luke.
Whoops.
There is no conscious activity going on.
I should start thinking before I act.
That is so interesting. I wonder what that means. It can just make you do things.
No. I'm going to start thinking.
Slap
now.
yourself. There we go.
Yeah. I
Great.
did think about that because I was like, oh, that's going to be quite funny. If I
Rub
do
your
it,
face
so-
quite gently.
Mm. That
Lick
does
your
feel quite
nose.
No. I thought about that.
Oh, he has consciousness.
So I'm standing behind Luke, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
Luke is Luke's conscious self.
Hello.
I am the underlying part of Luke's brain, and Luke's body is Luke's body. So
Yep.
me, the underlying part of Luke's brain, is like, "Hey, you want to raise your hand?" And then Luke thinks
I want to raise my hand. I will.
he did it. And from Luke's perspective, the conscious entity of Luke thinks, "I decided to raise my hand, and then I did it."
So crucially, I don't actually hear you.
Yeah, you don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the only reason I decide to raise my hand is because you said what you said.
He's there
But
anyway.
I'm not aware that I heard you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Weird.
Very weird, right?
strange.
Very odd.
Yeah.
In that you have already decided to do something before you are conscious that you've decided to do it.
Yeah.
Just very strange.
So
And
yeah.
And so you see how that can have implications for sort of intrusive thoughts in that there are some things that you're aware of and some things that you aren't. And so if something bubbles to the surface without you necessarily wanting it to be there, a thought that would maybe normally get filtered out, that could be distressing.
Mm-hmm.
It provides a potential sort of mechanism for those thoughts bubbling to the surface, because we do know that there is more to sort of consciousness and thought than sort of appears evident to your conscious mind.
It kind of makes you wonder how much of your brain is actually you then, because it makes you feel like you, the subjective experience,
Mm-hmm.
are a function of the brain, not the entire brain.
Makes me feel like a sim.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think of it in that it is beneficial to have a conscious part of the brain, but it is not necessarily beneficial for that conscious part of the brain to be aware of all things that are happening. For example, the conscious part of the brain really bloody sucks at doing a lot of stuff, right? Like whenever, okay, so for example, I've used this before, but Luke, I was driving your car the other day, and it's a different car to the car that I'm used to. It's an automatic. I'm used to manual. So instead of driving just on autopilot, I had to think about driving.
Consciously.
And my body was not good at it. It did not like having to consciously think about driving. It was like learning to drive again.
Yeah.
And I had the same thing the other day when I got a zip car to help my friend move. It was I'd gotten used to driving the automatic, and I went back to a manual. Specifically a manual that I've never driven before. So, like, there's sort of the clutch and the acceleration was slightly different to what I'm used to.
Yeah.
And so I had to consciously think about driving, and I hated it.
I think Corey just sucks at driving and is blaming the cars.
I'm actually quite good at driving.
In
Wasn't
his car.
I know.
It's this really interesting thing, because I was driving an automatic and I was having a really bad time, and I was bad at driving because I'm not used to driving an automatic. And then I was driving a manual, and it was not a manual I've normally driven, so I was really bad at driving that time. And
My
then,
point
That's
was,
good
no,
at-
Jenny,
then I
sorry,
drove my own car,
good at one
having
car,
driven
yeah.
this manual and driven this automatic, and now I'm bad at driving this car. What can possibly be the cause of this?
When am I good at driving?
I'm good at driving in Mario Kart, but only when I'm Bowser.
No, so seriously, I had gotten used to the automatic.
Yeah.
I got used to the manual like immediately, and it was fine. But for the first little bit, it was really like I hated driving until my brain was like, oh, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
And until it was like all this conscious stuff that you're doing, let me handle it.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then I didn't need to consciously think about it anymore, and my body was just driving, and I was just along for the ride. It was great.
Yeah.
Loved it. But I mean, you can think about this. I mean, if you've consciously got to think about doing things, I think Luke, an example that you used before, or maybe Jamp used, I can't remember. It was if you were to flip a keyboard. So you've got a keyboard, and you were to flip all the keys to the opposite direction, or at least the sort of opposite side. So the top end of the keyboard was the opposite side.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it'd be really difficult for anyone to do. Even though their fingers are very, very good at doing it, they'd have to consciously think about where to place their fingers, which is hard and difficult. And the whole point of, I think, learning to do a lot of things is to get the conscious mind out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Just get another part of your brain to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that the consciousness is useful, evidently, but it's the sort of maybe that sort of self-awareness is a bit of it's a solid feature, but it can be pretty buggy if you apply it to too much. So it's kind of contained, and the rest of the brain does a lot of other stuff that consciousness really kind of sucks at.
Tell you, something popped in my mind whilst you're talking about flipping the keyboards, because essentially what you've got there is like you've trained one of your hands to do something, and you're trying to get the other hand to do it, and it's like you can technically do it, but it's not automatic anymore, right? I was on my honeymoon last week, and Rebecca fell asleep, and I was on Instagram or something, and I saw this thing about unconscious biases, and so I just was like, hey, this will be interesting. I'll do an unconscious bias test, and I did a bunch of unconscious bias tests, and I don't know if you've ever done them and seen how they function. No?
So I've never taken one myself, but I've read about them.
So the way that an unconscious bias test, or at least the unconscious bias test I did, worked was that it gives you it says press the left side of the screen for example, if you're doing one on dark-skinned people versus light-skinned people, press the left side of the screen for dark-skinned people, press the right side of the screen for light-skinned people, and then it also then separately tests you, categorize these words into good words and bad words.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, it uses the reaction time you have to categorizing good words or bad words based on the thing that whether you just saw a light-skinned person or a dark-skinned person or a disabled person or an undisabled person or a Muslim versus a Jewish person or whatever, and basically uses the amount of time that it takes you to categorize them based on good, bad, / Muslim, Jewish person, black person, white person, whatever, and then works out whether you have an unconscious bias. And it's so interesting because it's essentially, as far as I understand it, it's essentially going how many connections have you got between this category of person and good associations or bad associations, and then how that will then affect if you come across a person who is that category of person, how quickly your brain will be able to label them good or bad, and whether you have a prevalence or a preference for labeling people in that way, good or bad. And there's a kind of a jump there, which is to say that the reaction time then means that you will then automatically label them those things. But it's just, I think, that you'll be quicker to label them good or you'll be quicker to label them bad based on that association. I just found that so interesting. It was fascinating. And yeah, I have some unconscious biases.
No way,
I think
really?
everyone has some.
Everyone
I had
does.
slight unconscious biases. There were some I didn't have, and I was actually quite proud of myself. But there were some that I did have conscious bias.
Oh, we're going to talk about this
Yeah,
afterwards. But let's find out specifically how racist, ableist, and sexist
All
Luke
of
is.
mine were slight, and I saw them. And I was like, yeah, absolutely, definitely. not that I did, but
Yeah, absolutely. Oh gosh, I hate women.
no, just because everyone has unconscious biases, and
Yeah.
I'm not everyone will have them, and I it's just, and it's like you have to accept that, and but the understanding how it works, there is a separate thing to you holding a conscious opinion on something to the reaction time of the different parts of your brain. And I think it's very important for everyone to understand that's what's being talked about when we're talking about bias. That's what's being talked about when we're talking about unconscious bias. It might be a conscious, actual bigoted opinion you hold, very possibly. But also the other layer of that, you can be as unbigoted as you like consciously, but if your brain makes a faster association to bad or good based on a trait, that is a bias, and you have to accept that.
Well, I think the issue is that what really bothers me about this is people say, "Well, I would never make a racist decision." But do you know why you make decisions? If
No,
you've got
you
two,
No, you don't.
if you have two equal candidates, that's the example they always give. If you've got two equal candidates, you're never going to have two exactly equal candidates because you're going to judge people based on different things.
Yeah.
So you might unconsciously judge, say, a black person slightly more harshly than you judge a white person. So you're less likely to have two completely equal candidates because
Yeah.
the black people are slightly lesser.
But if you submitted the exact same CV twice under two different names, then it's shown that a lot of people have that unconscious bias.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You change your name from Jose to Joe.
Yeah.
Mwah, amazing. You go from, I don't know, the Latroy to Troy. Get rid of that lie you sorted, right?
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
It's interesting. People seem to be very, and what people hate as well is the unconscious. When you say, you have unconscious bias, they hear you're a big smelly racist and you're evil. And it's no. You have unconscious bias. Everyone does, and ignoring it is going to do more harm than being like, oh yeah, I suppose I do.
Yeah. And it comes back to the intrusive thoughts thing, basically, because if you have an unconscious bias you're not aware of, and you're presented with a person of a certain category, and you'll get a thought about them that you didn't choose to have, or you might get a thought about them.
My
If you're
God,
trying
yeah.
to work out whether you can trust somebody, if you're trying to work out whether somebody is a good candidate for a job, you will form this instant opinion, which is entirely or predominantly based on the circuitry of your brain.
Well, I think racist intrusive thoughts are actually helpful to an extent.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Corey's
no, genuinely, I think they can actually be helpful because it can make you more consciously aware of unconscious bias.
Right.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
If your goal is to become less biased, then yes, they're helpful.
Yeah,
Your
sure.
goal is
No, because it's an intrusive thought. It's unwanted. So
If
if
you
it's
have
unwanted,
intrusive
then you
racist,
recognize.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not
Oh.
saying that racist thoughts are good.
Cool,
Saying-
caught that one. There you go.
Intrusive racist thought, because it's like
Yeah.
because if something like pops your head, you're like, well, if it ever happens to me, and things pop into my head all the time, and I hate it.
Yeah.
Like it pops into my head, I'm like, oh,
Caught
But
you there.
so what you
Uh-oh.
mean by that is the fact that you want to label it an intrusive thought shows that you don't hold that opinion consciously, you hold it unconsciously.
Well, yeah, it gives you a much easier way of sort of labeling or sort of like addressing your unconscious bias and dismantling it, right? So if you see, let's say a brown person, and you immediately find something come into your head of like a sort of a thought of mistrust coming to your head,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be like, wait, hold on, why?
Yeah.
And if you sort of address that and you think, well, you know, they're wearing if you address that and if you address that and it's like okay, so there's nothing. There's literally no difference between this person and the white person that's walking with them. But if you you could also address it and be like, well, actually, hold on, wait, there are these things that would make me mistrustful of anyone in this situation, right? So it's a case of like you can actually judge whether your reaction is like racist or not.
Tell you a really funny thing that I've started noticing recently. So I was like starting to become very conscious of this, and I was worried that I was like, am I like got unconscious racism in my head? Obviously, everyone has a bit of unconscious racism in their head, but I was noticing like I'd be driving and I'd see a person, and the first couple of times I noticed this, it was a black man, and I just was like, oh, for a moment, and then it started happening to white men as well, and I realized the problem was just men.
Really funny.
I was like, oh, it's happening to all the white men as well, so it's just men. Okay, cool.
No women?
No,
Oh, fine.
no, they're good.
Okay, good.
Good to know. Reverse sexist.
Yeah.
Luke Clifford.
Yeah,
I think that's a good place to sort of wrap up.
that is it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The clock says yes. No, I mean it's a good conversation, I think, about intrusive thoughts. Thank you to our patrons for voting for that. If you want to become a patron, you get lots of cool stuff. Like we said up top, you get access to SCI Guys After Dark, the premium monthly podcast where the conversation continues. We're actually about to do a SCI Guys After Dark right now.
We are.
Right after
Turn all
this.
the lights off.
Yeah. So if you keep some of the lights on.
All of them.
No, not Luke.
Oh, ooh. Sneak preview. There you go.
There you go, sneak preview.
Jesus, that's a bit bright.
Oh,
Sorry.
that is very bright.
I'll turn it down.
So if you enjoy hearing us talk about whatever, I mean, SCI Guys After Dark, as we've said, doesn't need to be strictly science-based. We talk about politics, we talk about philosophy, we talk about basically all the things that bounce around inside of Luke's head, really.
That's the
Is it my
format.
podcast? You guys are the guests.
We need to give you an outlet. We may as well monetize it.
Look, honestly, I mean, it's like, think of it this way. It's an outlet for you, and also we can all make money from it.
Well, it's
Yeah.
just the stuff that normally we would like go on a massive tangent because I've said something, and Corey and I will have an interesting discussion, and then we'll try and get Jem to say something. And
I'll be in the room anyway.
We'll be talking. Jam will be there.
Circumstantially, I'm always there.
and then we normally go, this has gone on for 40 minutes, we need to get back on topic, or we go, we want to go home.
And it
please.
always ends with, oh, we should have recorded that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's that stuff. Yeah.
So
it's
now
just-
we're recording it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And, you know, on top of that, not just the sort of bonus podcast, and we say that it is a bonus podcast. Psy Guys After Dark is entirely its own show. You get also bonus episodes of Psy Guys. So you get a bonus episode every single month. It could be any topic similar to what we do on Psy Guys, maybe just a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more fun. And you get to vote on episode topics. You get to submit episode topics for vote. And if you're an executive producer patron, you get to give us an episode topic that we have to do. No voting, no nothing.
I know.
Supersede democracy.
Overruling power.
If you have enough capital to
Wow.
invest.
Oh, God.
the Tory donor
What are
of the
we?
Psy Guys world.
It's like crony capitalism, isn't it? So definitely go and check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Psy Guys. I mean, it helps us do everything that we do. It's bloody great. I mean, we had some kit problems that we managed to solve
But
immediately.
you can see us.
Yeah. Thanks to you guys. Before we go, I think there's something we've got to do. There's a little something we've got to do.
Is it a quickfire quiz by any chance?
What was the quickfire quiz?
Dun, 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 dun. Intrusive edition.
Intrusive edition?
Yeah.
No, intrusive thought edition.
No,
It's not an
just
intrusive
intrusive
edition.
edition.
I like intrusive edition.
It's very intrusive.
So the quickfire quiz, same rules as always. I'll ask one question with the two of you, just one question only. The first person to buzz in with the correct answer after I've finished asking the question wins. What do they win, champ?
Nothing.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Luke, what's your buzzer?
Oh,
Champ, what's your buzzer?
wow.
Did you pull that out just for this?
That's
No,
an
I
inhaler.
needed it, but then I was like, this is a noise I could use for a quickfire quiz.
Great. Wow.
Amazing.
Oh, that's me getting an asthma attack after having a really bad intrusive thought.
Ah,
Wow.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
very
yeah,
good.
Yeah. So, my question for you both is in the study I was speaking about earlier, what percentage of people reported experiencing at least one intrusive thought in the past 3 months?
Huh.
I'm going to give that to Champ.
Was it like
he tried.
93.57%? 8%? 6%?
There we go, 93.6%. Well done, Champ.
Thank you.
Why don't we say thank you to all of our new patrons?
Yes.
And
Oh,
actually,
yeah, we have a
first
few, don't
of
we?
all, I do want to say thank you to
time of the month.
I want to say thank you to the most recent patron that we've just had, who joined 10 minutes ago as of
Whoa.
recording.
Wow.
LW. Just got the notification as that came through. So thank you
Oh.
to LW.
Thank you to Michaela Serganova.
Thank you to Mac Cook.
Thank you to Brendan.
Thank you to Leah O'Sullivan.
Thank you to Alyssa Paris.
Thank you to Heteranthera.
Cool.
Thank you to Yana Young.
Thank you to They Call Me Looney.
Ooh.
Sometimes they do.
Hello, Looney.
Entirely unplanned that you got that. Thank you to Doodle.
Thank you to Elijah Gresilak. I hope I said that right.
Thank you to Lucy.
Thank you to Nick Gill. Or Nick Gill. Or that's not even the one I was supposed to do. Thank you to Caitlin A. Moran.
I was going to pick up on that one. Thank you to Scarlett.
Thank you to Abby.
Thank you to Cody Miller.
Wow.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
If you would like to be thanked, just join our Patreon and you'll be thanked next time we do a Patreon vote episode. Isn't that nice?
It
That's
is.
so nice.
Very nice. Oh, also, I forgot to mention, patrons also get access to every single Psy Guys Live. Psy Guys Live, this fortnightly live show that we do. It's a lot of fun.
4 shows
Oh,
a
yeah.
month now on Patreon. Bonus, After Dark, and 2 live shows.
What the fuck are we
Amazing.
doing?
That's pretty cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's
You know,
pretty
we,
cool.
we might even up our After Dark output if we get enough patrons. Maybe we'll set a little goal for that.
Oh,
Huh?
goodness.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, let's set a little goal.
Go, Corey.
Oh my god, imagine this. Two weekly Sly Guys shows at some point. Probably. That'd be a lot.
If they alternate, that's weekly. Yeah, you're right.
No, I mean like as in we could do 2 weekly shows. We got enough patrons for After
Oh.
Dark?
Oh, as in,
Absolutely.
like, After Dark every week.
After Dark every week, yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, let's set some goals for that.
Okay.
Let's set some goals for that right after this. So, I think that's it for the show. Before we go, we would like to thank all of our patrons with a very special thank you to executive producers Ashley Muller and Finn TZ. And also Thank you for watching. You can find the full references for this episode in the description. Subscribe for new episodes every Sunday, and why not leave us a nice wee comment? You can support the pod at patreon.com/SciGuys, or you can find and contact us at SciGuysPod on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and at SciGuys on TikTok too. Or you can send us an email at SciGuysPod@gmail.com.
That's SciGuysPod@gmail.com.
SciGuysPod
At gmail.com, you can follow me at Not Corey everywhere.
Follow me at Jamkin everywhere.
You can follow me at Luke Cutforth everywhere.
Sorry, I just got an intrusive thought there.
Oh, yeah?
Goodbye.
Was it that you want to follow me at Luke Cutforth everywhere?
No, it's that I want to
No.
delete all of Luke Cutforth's accounts everywhere.
Me too sometimes, man. Me too.
Goodbye.
Bye.